All right, so welcome to another edition of Inside Leadership. We're here with Tara Smith, who is the operating principal of two Keller Williams market centers and a team leader for a third. You want to talk about having a really full plate. Absolutely amazing. Tara's got a lot of energy, and I think you're going to really enjoy listening to what she has to say, guys. So, Tara, let me ask you, how did you choose real estate for your career?
Oh my gosh, that's a funny question. So I was a stay-at-home mom and actually dropped out of college, had my oldest son when I was just over 19 and stayed home for almost 10 years with the boys. I have 4 sons, and I thought it would be really fun to walk through houses. I'd always, like as a little girl, drew these little floor plans and had doll houses. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love looking at houses so much. This is probably a great career. And so I started these classes, and I get in and I'm like, what the heck is all of this legal and contracts? And I don't have any idea how to sell anything. And kind of came into a rude awakening, but just something that piqued my interest.
So it really isn't like HGTV?
Not at all. It's hard. I mean, I learned very quickly. I almost failed out of the business in my first 3 years.
Okay.
And it's funny, my third year, so my first year I sold 2 houses, which was my husband and I listing and buying a house. My second year I sold 2 houses, which was my sister listing and buying a house.
Okay.
And so my third year I went and got a job, like a full-time job. My kids were all in school, and I started in August. I was working at the school, and in September I stumbled on 3 houses. I sold 3 houses, and I looked down and I had made more money in the month of September than I was going to make the entire year in this full-time position. And I was like, what the heck are you doing? And that was a turning point for me.
You said something really interesting there. You stumbled on 3 deals in September. So what does stumbling on look like? You said you stumbled on it. Most people, sometimes even a blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then. So how did you stumble on 3? That's
a great question. And to be really honest, I have no idea, because this is like, I'm being transparent with you. My first 8 years in the business, I was not at Keller Williams, and I walked in, I was in the top 5 for the top independent brokerage in our city, by 8 or 10 years in the business. And I walked in to meet with a guy at Keller Williams, and he said, what are your goals this year? And I said, I don't know, never set a goal. So like literally when I say stumbled into business, that was my business plan for the first 8 to 10 years of my career, was just like whatever fell in my lap.
I guarantee you we're going to kind of circle back to this here in a few more questions. So that's fascinating. And one of the things that you'll learn, Tara, if you don't already know, and everyone else is listening, everybody has a different answer. That what the tipping point was for them. So, man, I can really be successful at this if I just did this. So it's really wonderful to hear that. So, Tara, let me ask you, what's one of the best investments that you've ever made, whether it was time, money, into people, what have you?
Yeah, there are, to be transparent, every bit of my time and money now is an investment in something. Like, I don't waste time at all. I'm super time blocked. Everything has a purpose. But if I was going to pinpoint something that I'm really proud of, in 2014, I got divorced, and that ended up taking me about a year to get finalized. In spring of 2015, I was a single mom with 4 boys, selling real estate, rebuilding my life, and I purchased a home for myself. And I went and found what I believed would be a future investment property. So I bought a foreclosure, put about $10,000 in it, did a lot of the work myself. And about 3 months later, I bought a short-term rental cabin, also a foreclosure. So I think for me, that was one of the best investments I made, because it taught me, even while I knew the industry, it empowered me to do things, to be uncomfortable. And that was a season of my life that would have been very easy to sit back and kind of coast. And I think that a lot of times those are the moments where, when we really dig in and we push forward, it really pays off. So those two properties, we just did cash out refis with Keller Mortgage. I think I have 200,000 in equity in both of those. And those were just
Nice.
me scraping pennies together as a single mom to like put something together for our future. So that's probably one of the best investments I made.
That's fantastic. So I'm hearing you bought the first one, and that it's not so much the return, that the instant gratification that you got, but more along the education and the strength to believe in yourself to be able to move that ball forward.
I'll never forget. I mean, I'd sold hundreds of houses, but I'd never done it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and I have this, it shows up in my timeline. I have a picture of me sticking that key in that door. And I felt like I could do anything. I really felt empowered, like I could accomplish or do anything. It was really up to me to go make it happen.
That's awesome. That's
it was
awesome.
great.
So Tara, what's one quirk or odd thing about you that most people may not know?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm going to give you two.
Sure.
The first one is I grew up in a very I grew up with a very strict religious background. So I was Pentecostal growing up. And so I was not exposed to any type of like mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a 10 or 15 year period of my childhood where like, I don't know all the cool 80s songs and I don't know all the cool TV shows because we just didn't participate in that. So that was like one thing that a lot of people, it's almost like I'm from a different era. Also, I'm an extreme introvert, and a lot of people are shocked by that on the assessments, behavior assessments, scale of 1 to 10. I'm a 1 for social ability. And, I teach and speak and coach and, am an integral part of market centers. I teach CE classes. And what's kind of cool about that is I tell people, or actually usually ask the room, how many of you are introverts? A bunch of people always raise their hand, and I say, well, so am I. Here's my ranking. And people are just shocked to find out that like, I really enjoy sitting on my back porch, quiet in solitude.
I can completely understand that. It's my biggest thing. I love just sitting out back doing nothing, watching birds fly by, animals go by, whatever the case is. And most people wouldn't believe that about me either. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So Tara, what habit do you have that most positively affects your life and your mindset?
That is a great question. I think that, so back to the period of my life when I got divorced, that was a really tough period of time for me. And I spent a lot of time in inspirational quotes, just really working to keep myself in a good headspace. So I think one habit that really impacts me positively, especially my mindset, is if I wake up and I'm not in a good headspace, I've actually trained myself like where to go and what to watch or listen or read to very quickly pivot how I'm thinking. Typically, if I can get into gratitude or empowerment, I can get into a really positive place. And I think that's a habit that I've created.
Excellent. And the decision behind that is where most people falter. You can't stop that first thought from coming into your head. What you do, the next step you take after that, determines your outcome. And that is fantastic. I appreciate that. So what do you do to reset and refocus?
I spend a lot of time on my back porch, in a rocking chair, watching the birds go by, listening to music. I have spent a lot of time as I've grown into different opportunities and positions in counterbalance. Actually did an interview with Gary Keller a couple years ago, and we were talking about all the things we were doing in the market center. And he said, so how's your time? Are you in counterbalance? And I immediately just came back and said, no, it's great. I'm managing everything. And a year later, I looked up and said, holy cow, you've been in counterbalance for a very long time. And so I think just really, really learning to, I don't sit still well. So watching TV isn't doesn't work well. Reading doesn't often take my mind off of things. Just for me, my sweet spot is sitting outside, turning on that music. And I found that that's the best place for me to refuel.
Excellent. So what bad advice do you most often hear in our profession?
I would say, anything that is like standard, or any advice that allows you to like be average, is really, really bad advice. I'm not a fan of mediocrity. I think that games, races, whatever, we win in that extra mile, and it doesn't take much at all to win. I mean, like if you look at 99% of people land, in one spot, the ones that become the 1 or 2 percenters literally give 1 or 2% more. And
it's that
just
tipping point.
Yeah. I mean, as an operating principal and as a team leader, I can look out into a room usually, and you can see the 1 or 2 percenters because they show up 5 minutes early and they stay 10 minutes late. They make that one extra call. They go to that one extra class. They're reading 3 more books a year. I don't know, but it's just the people that don't settle for being okay with status quo. I think anything status quo is bad advice. I would also say that a lot of people will get negative feedback at times in their life, and they, instead of letting that motivate them, they let it deflate them. So bad advice is bad advice. Take that bad advice and go, like, I'm a big fan of watch me. So like if I have naysayers or people that are just like, anything, it's not possible, or like you're not going to be able to do it, then I just kick it to watch me mode. And I'm like, oh yeah, watch me. I'm going to go figure it out.
Awesome.
So I think we can take bad advice and turn it into whatever we want.
Awesome. And Tara, last question for you is, what book or books do you most often recommend and why?
2 books on the like kind of growth side. My favorite book of all times is Relentless by Tim Grover. It is a sports book. It's about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, and it's essentially how do you go from good to great to unstoppable, and it's about that extra mile. That one I use a lot on Audible when I'm feeling tired or lacking motivation. I'll get in there and be like, okay, let's go get this done. The other one for growth would be The Go-Giver. And in that book, it's about an hour-and-a-half read. It's a little story about, they call it stratospheric success. And essentially it's got a few laws. And the first law is always give more in value than you receive in compensation. And that book is just about kind of like outgiving the reward. And if you do that, your success is unlimited. So those 2 are a couple of my favorites.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we've been chatting today with Tara Smith, who's operating principal of 2 Keller Williams Market Centers, team leader, former or current KWU master faculty. What else did I miss? A MAPS coach. She's kind of done it all. And that's somebody who just stumbled on 3 deals in September. And all of a sudden, this incredible career has been in front of her. Tara, thank you very much for the time today. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.